Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bible for Mages Week 2. My name is Josh Gentry. Welcome to the first lecture of Bible for Mages. And if you haven't already introduced yourself in the introduction thread, I hope you will do so now. If we were all meeting up in person, I would want us all to check in and have a moment of silence. But I still think a moment of silence would be useful. So, before we begin, as you are able, please get into a comfortable seating position, close your eyes, and put your hand over your heart. And concentrate on your breathing and your heartbeat. As lingering thoughts occur, take note of them and let them pass, returning always to the generosity of your breath, heartbeat, in this present moment. Thank you. So the name of this lecture is Just What is the Bible Anyway? I hope that it will serve as a grounding point for our approach to the Bible this summer. I hope you will all appreciate the radical nature of our work here, because being that we all study esotericism in one form or another, us reading a text that has so frequently been used against us, that's kind of a radical thing. Thus, the goal of my lecture, and in this class in general, is to help us all have a paradigm shift for how we encounter the biblical text. During my first month of seminary, I was assigned readings that radically changed my perspective on the Bible. One of which was an excerpt from the Women's Bible Commentary, edited by Newsom, Ringe, and Lapsley. By the way, Carol Newsom was one of my teachers. The passage that stood out to me is this. In the section Approaches to the Task of Interpretation, it reads, "Different ways women have experienced the power of the Bible individually and as members of different religious, social, and ethnic communities have led to a variety of approaches to the task of interpretation. Those approaches range along a continuum from affirmation that the entire Bible, as the Word of God, positively informs faith and practices, to, at the other extreme, outright rejection of the Bible as hopelessly and irredeemably misogynistic. There is no single correct or acceptable way to work when it comes to interpreting the Bible, but what should be kept in mind is that various approaches yield different results or conclusions." This was a good word for me because as a bisexual man, and as a person whose religious and scientific views are not compatible with Christian fundamentalists at all, it was really refreshing to hear all this, that it was a choice for me. It was well known that homophobia and misogyny are cousins, so the fact that such diverse approaches can be had with the Bible really meant something to me. Radical acceptance or radical rejection? That choice is up to us, but the important part is that we are knowledgeable and that we engage with the text. So, what is it that run-of-the-mill Christian folks say about the Bible? Some people say the Bible is holy. It is the Word of God. It is the literal Word of God. You have the word literal thrown around in every kind of way imaginable. People say the Bible is God-breathed, whatever that means. That the Bible is true. That the Bible is history, a story. The fact is, there is an enormous amount of tradition that goes with reading and interpreting the Bible. Although I want to empower you all to become more comfortable reading and interpreting the Bible, I would like for us to be mindful of the traditions surrounding it as we go. For one, we as magic practitioners come to the Bible with a different angle than the rest. But in order for us to really get our own angle, we have to understand the normative approach as well. How else will we be able to really understand the rules that apply to them and the rules that apply to us? Now, in terms of historical and the literary, the Bible is a book. It is a compilation of scrolls. It is a carefully curated compilation of scrolls. Those scrolls were obtained through the recording of numerous oral traditions. Thus, the text is both monovocal and polyvocal at the same time. That means that the Bible can be taken as one voice, and it can be read as the voices of the many diverse people that went into its crafting. Both of these are true at the same time. And that's because the Bible is not just a book that fell out of the sky one day. The ingredients which now go to make the Bible began as ancient cultural memories which evolved into oral traditions. These oral traditions transformed into scribal traditions, where scribes would reproduce a given scroll generation after generation. These memories, stories, and scrolls intermingled gradually until the text approaches something like what we might see in the Bible today, albeit they were in separate scrolls, and they were all written in ancient languages like Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek. From here, the early Christian church determined which various texts of the Hebrew religious tradition and the Jesus-worshipping traditions would make the final cut and be the most authoritative. There are many ancient stories about Jesus' life that were written down about the same time as the other Gospels that never made it into the Bible. And the last book of the Bible, Revelation, it's not the only revelation that happened. It's just the one doomsday account that was decided to be put in the Bible, one out of many. That was a choice. In short, each book of the Bible was carefully chosen. Read negatively, you could say that the leaders of the early church were vying for power, and they created a text that supported their new regime. Read more generously, you could say that the texts were the most supportive of the theology that they spiritually understood to be true, and that they were the most cogent and well-written of those texts. So, what exactly is in the Bible? You may know that the Christian Bible is divided into two sections, the so-called Old Testament and the New Testament. Scholars call the Old Testament the Hebrew Bible, and in Hebrew, the Hebrew Bible is called the Tanakh, which stands for Torah, Nevi'im, or the prophets, and the Ketuvim, or writings. Similarly, that is how I have it divided here. The Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, includes Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Deuteronomic history tells the story of the onset of the first temple period of Israel. And it includes Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings. There are the books of the prophets, which include Isaiah, Jeremiah, Baruch, Ezekiel, Daniel, etc. And then there are also the writings, which include wisdom literature like Psalms and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, as well as other important texts like Ruth, Esther, Lamentations, and the like. The structure of the New Testament is comparatively easier to understand. It includes the Gospels, which are the stories of Jesus, which include Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The author of Luke also wrote the book of Acts, so I have included it here as part of a gospel, although the Acts of the Apostles is not technically a gospel narrative. It is simply a sequel to the gospel narrative. Following the Gospels and Acts are the epistles. These are the various letters that members of the early church wrote to one another. The most noteworthy epistolarian of the New Testament is St. Paul, who changed the way that the early church understood itself in terms of being an extension of Judaism to being an all-new Jesus-centered religion that included both Jews and Greeks. There are other letters which include various understandings of what it means to be a member of this new religion, as well as mythical interpretations of the world that these people lived in. So that, I know, was a lot to deal with. So I want to encourage you to know that the best way to learn about the Bible is to read the Bible. And I'm not always going to be here to be able to guide you, although I hope that we will have a continued friendship. But there are some resources which I would like to introduce you to right now, which may be able to help expand your understanding of the Bible as you begin to read it on your own. Resources include the Bible Project. This is a video series on YouTube where the structure of various biblical accounts are digested and broken down and made really accessible. This series is not without its own theological bent. It is made to help people become Christian or to become better Christians. But it is nonetheless highly educational and, for the most part, very scholarly accurate. There is also the Blue Letter Bible. It also has its own theological spin to things. But one of the great things about the Blue Letter Bible is it allows you to see the texts of the biblical account in its original language, along with the side-by-side translation of those languages into modern words. You can then use the concordance numbers, that's a technical thing, but you can look up what those original words mean and how the text has translated those, or how the interpretations translate those words. Because each word in the Bible is actually much more full and meaningful than how the King James Bible would like to make it be. We also have some books that I would like to recommend. They're probably on the little expensive side, so by no means do you have to buy these. I just recommend them. Perhaps you could check them out from a library if you're curious. The first book I recommend is what I already mentioned, the Women's Bible Commentary. There's also the HarperCollins Bible Dictionary. If you want to learn the lore behind a specific thing in the Bible, I cannot tell you how valuable the HarperCollins Bible Dictionary is. If you want to know the difference between Messiah and the Son of Man, for example, I learned that from the HarperCollins Bible Dictionary. I can't recommend it highly enough. Now, these two sources are interesting if you're trying to debunk the myth that the Bible is just one thing. I had to do that. One, the Nag Hammadi scriptures contain various esoteric pre-Christian scriptures, or scriptures that could have been Christian in another world. They contain alternate gospels, they contain poetry, creeds, songs, all these things which could be understood as Christian. They're just not a part of the Christian canon as it exists today. Finally, I would also like to recommend The Bible with Sources Revealed by Friedman. This text highlights the words in the Bible to associate them with various extant or theoretical scriptural traditions which were blended together to actually form the Bible. Both of these to say that the Bible, as it exists now, is not necessarily how it could have existed. The Bible itself is a construct. Thank you all so much for spending this time with me today. Please be sure to take the poll in the group. I would like to know whether or not going forward you would like this class to be focused on general content information, or whether you would like for it to be specialized with an eye towards the nature of magic in the Bible and its implications. I would like to do both, but we won't have time to cover everything, so knowing your preference would mean a lot to me. Finally, please feel free to ask any number of questions or post comments in the comments section of this video. It would mean a lot to me and would help me get to know you guys better. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great week. Until next time.